Lewis Hamilton's car has been officially flagged by the FIA for post-race irregularities in Abu Dhabi, and the timing could not be worse for Ferrari. Telemetry revealed strange rear-end behavior, unbalanced brake temperatures, and possible setup violations that went unnoticed during scrutineering. Now Ferrari faces a full-blown investigation, and Hamilton's final race result is under threat as the FIA digs deeper into what really went wrong. Subscribe to the channel right now because this could explode into the biggest off-season scandal Ferrari has faced since 2019, and it's only just beginning. The final chapter of the 2025 Formula One season in Abu Dhabi has not closed quietly. In fact, it has reopened wounds Ferrari hope to heal. Just hours after the checkered flag, the FIA confirmed that Lewis Hamilton's SF25 is under official investigation following the discovery of technical irregularities in the post-race data. What started as a standard compliance check quickly evolved into a major concern after inconsistencies were found in ride height logs, brake temperature symmetry, and rear-end grip performance, all pointing to potential mechanical or setup-related violations. Hamilton's race had already raised eyebrows for its inconsistencies. After a relatively clean launch, his pace dropped off sharply mid-race without clear reason. Onboard footage captured unsettling moments where Hamilton was clearly fighting the car, especially during mid-corner exits and high-speed transitions, most noticeably at turns 5, 9, and 14. The rear stability simply vanished without any signs of tire graining or overheating. Engineers initially blamed setup miscalculations, but the numbers didn't back that up, and that's when the FIA stepped in. According to paddock insiders, it was the FIA's encrypted telemetry feed that triggered the alarm. The ride height sensors on Hamilton's SF25 showed unexpected vertical movement during DRS zones and heavy braking phases, with a rear-end compression pattern outside the accepted tolerance window. That kind of deviation is critical in modern F1, especially at Yas Marina, where floor contact and aerodynamic balance are everything. When the FIA compared these readings to pre-race declarations, discrepancies appeared. At the same time, Ferrari's brake temperature data raised even more questions. The front right and rear left calipers ran with a heat asymmetry beyond expected tolerances, something that usually only happens with suspension damage or an incorrect balance adjustment. But Ferrari had submitted no suspension issues nor setup corrections in their post-race declaration. That's a red flag for stewards who are now reviewing whether a silent failure occurred or if Ferrari made late modifications that went unreported. More troubling was the sudden shift in Hamilton's aero balance during the second stint, where the car began oversteering heavily on power. This behavior coincided with a mid-race radio exchange in which Hamilton asked if something had broken underneath. Ferrari's response was ambiguous, offering no technical detail. Now, the FIA is cross-referencing the onboard footage, floor cam imagery, and real-time torque sensor outputs to determine whether an unapproved component failed or worse, was modified. What's fueling the fire inside Maranello is the internal uncertainty. Sources close to Ferrari say that some engineers questioned the behavior of the rear suspension even before the race start, noting that the dynamic camber angles weren't matching simulation expectations. Those concerns, however, were apparently dismissed as within range. Now, with the FIA involved, Ferrari is scrambling to assemble a defensive technical report, hoping to prove that any irregularities were the result of component degradation, not deliberate setup changes or regulatory breaches. For Hamilton, this situation is personal. This was supposed to be the race that closed a transitional chapter at Ferrari, a final push before regrouping for 2026. Instead, he's once again at the center of controversy in Abu Dhabi. And for Ferrari, it's a nightmare scenario. Their most senior driver under investigation, their car's legality in question, and their internal confidence fractured at the very end of a season they hoped would restore stability. But this is Formula One, and nothing explodes faster than tension inside the Scuderia. The FIA's initial analysis pointed directly at the ride height system. On Hamilton's SF25, the rear sensors recorded vertical movement that didn't correlate with tire wear, fuel load, or typical aero flex. These irregular shifts occurred during heavy braking zones and under full throttle acceleration, precisely the moments where downforce distribution must remain stable. If the car was running lower than the minimum allowed ride height under dynamic loads, Ferrari could be facing a breach of Article 3.7 of the technical regulations, which governs floor legality and minimum clearance. Another area of concern was the plank wear rate underneath the car. The wooden skid block mandated to prevent teams from running too low showed asymmetric degradation after the race. According to the FIA's post-race inspection, Hamilton's left rear section was significantly more worn than the rest of the plank. This could suggest illegal levels of compression in high-speed corners or under DRS, both of which would hint an aerodynamic advantage. The FIA's technical delegates are now determining whether this was caused by abnormal suspension behavior or a deeper chassis imbalance. Attention has also turned to the rear suspension assembly, particularly the pushrod and wishbone system. During mid-corner telemetry analysis, Hamilton's car exhibited an unnatural lateral movement, the kind that suggests either a weakened suspension arm or excessive bushing flex. If Ferrari failed to detect or report such behavior, it could be a clear violation of Article 10.3, which requires teams to log and submit all component irregularities, especially those influencing ride height or balance during a race. Brake performance also raised major red flags. Hamilton's rear brake bias appeared to fluctuate abnormally during his second and third stints, sometimes shifting more than 2.5% from one corner to the next. This kind of variation is unusual and typically only appears in cars running custom brake-by-wire maps. But Ferrari had not declared any special settings for Hamilton that weekend. If the FIA finds that an unapproved BBW profile was used, it would not only breach the technical regulations but could also trigger a sporting penalty. The energy deployment profile via the MGUK system is also being reviewed. Data shows Hamilton's car delivering electric power earlier than expected in low-speed corners. While this may seem minor, such behavior can yield tenths of a second in lap time over a full race. If Ferrari programmed Hamilton's car with an energy map that wasn't identically applied to Charles Leclerc's, or worse, wasn't disclosed to the FIA, that would violate Article 5.2, which demands parity and transparency in hybrid energy delivery systems. Additionally, the FIA is auditing Hamilton's ECU logs to determine if torque delivery and throttle mapping were altered before or during the race. Minor adjustments to throttle curves or torque ramp rates can drastically change how a car exits corners and manages tire degradation. If Ferrari tweaked these parameters between qualifying and race day without FIA authorization or failed to mirror the updates on both cars, the team could face serious questions about sporting fairness. Finally, there's the issue of non-disclosure. Even if every irregularity is eventually explained by natural wear or component failure, Ferrari could still be penalized for not declaring these anomalies in real time. The FIA mandates that any performance-altering behavior from floor flex to brake offset must be communicated immediately to technical delegates. If Ferrari delayed or omitted that communication, the punishment could include fines, loss of constructor points, or even driver disqualification, depending on how severe the oversight is deemed. When the FIA investigates post-race technical irregularities, their focus is not just on performance gain, but on regulatory compliance under the International Sporting Code and technical regulations. In the case of Hamilton's SF25, any deviation from declared ride height, floor flexibility, or power unit behavior, whether deliberate or accidental, is treated with zero tolerance. Article 1.3.3 makes it clear, it is the competitor's responsibility to ensure compliance with the regulations at all times. That means Ferrari holds full accountability even if the issue emerged mid-race. The scrutiny begins with Article 3.7, which governs bodywork and ride height. If Hamilton's rear end was found to be running below the legal minimum due to floor compression or dynamic rake manipulation, that would be an immediate breach. In past seasons, such as the infamous Red Bull plank or incident in Austin, the FIA acted swiftly. The penalties in such cases range from time penalties to full disqualification from final results, and considering this occurred in the last Grand Prix, the stakes could not be higher. The second legal pillar is Article 10, covering suspension and steering systems. The FIA is now inspecting whether the pushrod or wishbone geometry contributed to dynamic behavior that was not pre-approved. The use of any flexible or load-dependent components, even if they deform due to race wear, is regulated. If the SF25's geometry shifted under pressure and Ferrari failed to declare it, it could be interpreted as an unapproved aerodynamic aid or as a mechanical breach. This kind of violation has historically drawn strong sanctions. The brake-by-wire irregularities on Hamilton's car also fall under Appendix 6 of the Technical Regulations, which stipulates that any software controlling braking force must be homologated and equal between both drivers. If Hamilton's BBW settings were mapped to compensate for mid-race tire changes or instability without authorization, the FIA will consider it a programmable advantage. even if unintentional. That again could lead to exclusion from race classification, especially if it provided a measurable gain. Another key rule under review is Article 5.2, which addresses hybrid systems and power deployment. Every team must submit a power unit declaration covering how energy is harvested and deployed via MGUK and MGUH systems. If the FIA finds that Hamilton received a more aggressive or early deploying map than Leclerc without this being documented or declared, Ferrari could face charges of driver inequality, a highly sensitive issue, after past controversies involving engine modes and team orders. Equally important is the issue of timing and disclosure. The FIA expects teams to report any mid-race anomalies that may impact legality or safety. If Ferrari suspected that the suspension or brake system was misbehaving and failed to immediately alert race control, that's a procedural breach. Even if there's no technical illegality found, failing to report real-time risk factors, especially in a driver's final stint of the season, can result in financial penalties, reprimands, and license points for both the team and the driver. Finally, the potential fallout is not limited to just this race. If the FIA determines that Ferrari's irregularities form a pattern, such as late season updates not properly declared or discrepancies between driver setups, they may trigger a broader compliance audit heading into the 2026 regulation changes. For Hamilton, that creates an unstable entry point into the next season. And for Ferrari, it's a reputational blow at the worst possible time as they fight to keep trust from sponsors, fans, and their newly recruited technical leadership.